What up, Wargamers? Welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, Stos, and today we are back for another Let's Hobby. This is my video series where I show you what I've been working on and what I have been getting done. So, I thought it had been a little while since we did a hobby check-in, so here we are, we're checking in. And what have I been doing? Well, I have been putting some work into my vampire counts. I have painted 2 new units and a character, and I've added a new artillery piece to my Empire army, which, you know, this will be the first thing that I have painted and added to the 3D printed Empire army that was gifted to me by Grayson Brill. Grayson, thank you so much, mate. You bloody champion of a human being, you. So I've been wanting to add something to it for a little while, and it's kind of been on the cards, so this will be the first thing that I've added, which I'm super excited about. I have also been painting some 3D printed terrain that I purchased off Etsy. I wanted a couple of, particularly themed pieces, and I was able to find some interesting stuff there that you can't just, buy from Games Workshop or somewhere else conventional. The 3D printed market, fills a lot of interesting niches, particularly in terrain, which is super cool. So I've painted a couple of those. I've also given an old piece of terrain that, veterans of the channel will have seen in many battle reports, just a bit of a facelift, I looked at it and was like, well, you know what, that could use a little bit of work, so just, gave it a little bit of a dry brush and stuff and just, brought it up a little bit. So yeah, some new units, some 3D printed terrain, and a bit of love to an old piece. So I've been doing a bunch of stuff. Now, a bunch of these pieces have actually already featured in battle reports. I've actually already filmed 2 battle reports. One, I think, is already actually up on the channel in terms of like the 3D printed terrain, but I thought I'd show it off in the Let's Hobby anyway. But as per like the new units for the vampire counts and the Empire, they are already filmed in a couple of battle reports, one of which is currently live for my channel members only, and will be going live, I think, at the end of this week. And another one that is still on the editing table. So there's some battle reports incoming, guys. So expect to see some of the stuff that you're seeing here coming up real soon. But you'll get to see them in this video in just a minute. Now, guys, if you enjoy this video, don't forget, go through those YouTube things, okay? Put a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you want to support the channel, consider becoming a channel member. All of this new stuff that's slowly getting added, these new pieces of terrain, these new units, new battle mats, all of this is coming straight from my channel members and the support that they are, sending my way. So huge thank you to all of my current and past channel members. Love you so much, guys. Thank you for supporting, what we're doing here. Comment, leave some comments on the video. Let me know what you think of what you see, and let me know if there's something you want to see coming in. This is a good place to let me know what you want to see added, because talk to me. But without any further ado, let's have a look at what I've been working on and what I've been getting done. And this is what I have gotten done on my vampire counts and my Empire armies. I have done 41 skeleton warriors with spears, 3 bases of spirit hosts, a tomb banshee for my vampire counts, and a hellblaster volley gun, yes, for the Empire. Very nice, love it. So let's start out with the skeletons, because they are probably the least interesting. Everyone's seen skeleton warriors, but I have painted a bunch of them. Yes, look at them, the Legion of the Dead. So yeah, and I'm pretty happy with how they turned out. 41 of them. Why 41, you ask? Because I don't know. Because that's how many I had in the end, so that's how many I painted. So yeah, I've wanted to add, another unit of core to my vampire counts for a little while now. I wanted basically just something to be able to kind of shake up my core choices, because I've only had the one unit, although, I've got something like 40 skeleton warriors with hand weapons and shields. But you know, you kind of, particularly in 6th edition, you need that many just to be able to raise them throughout the game. In Old World, not so much, because, you know, you don't raise them past their starting unit strength. So, but you do want to start with very big units for that reason. So I've wanted another unit just to be able to shake up my core choices, you know, rather than taking the unit of, you know, skeleton warriors with hand weapons, take some with spears. And spears are very good in the Old World now. They're not, you know, hand weapon and shield is not the ubiquitous choice that it is, say, in 6th edition. Spears are actually, you know, a better choice now. They cost more, but they're a lot better. And yeah, or instead of taking, you know, my big unit of zombies with skeleton warriors, take 2 units, could do a more elite army with an extra unit of skeleton warriors and just have zombies to raise potentially. So yeah, I've wanted to add, you know, another big brick of core skeletons just so that I can shake up those core choices, because invariably the core of an army, you know, is often the biggest part. So having something that I can change around, you know, to change up those core choices was a must for me. I really wanted it. So yes, so here they are, 41 skeleton warriors with spears. Oh boy. And look at that, it's like it never happened. So I painted these guys exactly like I painted my, you know, 40 odd skeleton warriors with hand weapons and shields. As per usual, I have gone heavy in the old Zenithal Prime and contrast paint method. So yeah, as per usual, give them a prime in black out of my airbrush, and then from top down /45 degrees, you know, hit them with white primer to sketch out, you know, a zenithal or, you know, top down light source so that they are lighter at the top and darker at the bottom. And then from there, it's contrast paint, people. So obviously we have done a lot of skeleton horde, I think it is, which is the bone color for all of them. So all of the bone just gets one big coat of skeleton horde. The red is flesh tearers red. And then I've got Abaddon black. I think it's Black Templar for the black, because I've gone, as you can see on some of the flags, we've got, you know, half black and half red. I've kind of done some alternating black and red on this unit. I've used a mixture of browns for some of the wooden shields and the straps and the spear hafts. I've used snakebite leather, gore-grunter fur, wildwood. I grabbed a couple of new brown paints from the contrast method, Garrigak Sewer, and a kind of reddish brown that I really like, which unfortunately I can't remember the name of. It's, I don't know, it's like the Beast Lord Brown or something. It's the one that, you know, it's kind of named after Beastmen or that kind of deal, but it does this really nice and interesting reddish brown. Like I'm pretty sure that's it right there on that shield. A really nice color. So yeah, that's the majority of the paints. And then as for the metallics, as just like the rest of the Vampire Count's army, I mixed the metallic myself using the Vallejo air color aluminium, which is just an incredibly like rich metallic color, really, really bright. And so to mix it down, I'll mix it with some black ink to make it a darker metallic, and then to give it this kind of bronze color that I've used across the entire army, I'll mix in some burnt umber ink as well, which has become, you know, a favored tool of mine, the burnt umber ink. You'll see, you know, in some of the terrain coming up that I'll show you, I've used it a bit in that as well. And so yeah, mixing those things, it ends up coming out as this lovely, you know, bronzy color, which I then just, you know, wash over with Nihilakh oxide to give it that, you know, that patina, as you can see, or the oxidization of the bronze. Because yeah, for whatever reason, I decided early on with my Vampire Counts that I basically didn't want to use silver. I didn't want to use the rusty metal, you know, rusted silver. I wanted all bronze and like patina or oxidization. And yeah, I think I really like it. I stuck with that choice, and you know, I think out of the whole army, there's only a couple of things that have metal. The vampire count, I think, has some metal chains on his armor, which makes him stand out a little bit. And I think my zombies do have the rusted metal, because it doesn't make sense for them to have the, the bronze stuff, because they're just kind of like peasants. Peasants that have been killed recently, so they kind of needed the rusty metal. But everything else, I wanted to have that ancient look about it. Ancient warriors back in the Bronze Age that have been raised to be, the vampire minions. That was kind of my idea for it. So all of my grave guard, all of my skeletons, all of them have this oxidized bronze rather than rusted metal. So I made that decision and I have stuck with it, and I like it. Because it also means, the colors that are chosen are red, black, and blue. So blue being the accent color, and you get the blue from the oxidization. Some of my characters have like greeny blue cloaks. So yeah, that's the kind of triad, or the trinity of my Vampire Counts army. And as per usual, it's a simple paint scheme to pull off with the contrast paint. But man, it gets it done quick. And I love the results. They speak for themselves. Or at least I think so. As people love to say, these skeletons aren't going to win any painting competitions, but that's not what I'm painting them for. I'm painting them to paint an army. And anyone that paints 41 skeletons to competition level, they have a stronger mind than I, because that would break me. So I am looking for, tabletop standard / tabletop plus at best for my rank and file men. Honestly, probably even my characters. I don't go that far beyond it. I'll get, some extra highlights on my characters, but I want them to look good. And, to me, these definitely look good, but I am not the most artistic person out there. I'm definitely not looking to constantly push myself and push the envelope in terms of painting skills. I just want them to look good, and I want them to be, functional gaming pieces that I can be proud of. And this is achieving it, and at a reasonable rate of production, which I love. So yes, I've also done their bases, just like, all of my Vampire Counts army. I just use my base grit mix. I'll start by gluing down some of these bigger rocks that I think are from an art decorating thing from a $2 shop. You can get decoration rocks. Came in this big tub. My partner bought it for me, just came home with it one day from a $2 shop. I was like, hey, these could be good. And I was like, heck yeah. And I've used them ever since. So I'll super glue some of those down on the base first. And then I've got a grit mix that I just keep replenishing over time, which is, just a few different kinds or levels of grit, and sand from a beach, and bought grit from a, hardware store, and dirt. And then I'll PVA that down. It all gets a very watered down coat of a craft store paint that, again, it's super cheap craft store paint. That is a burnt sienna. So it's this really warm color, without a wash on it. It's actually very orange. It's this super orangey brown color. So that goes on over the top of everything. I don't even prime the basing material. I prime everything without the basing material on it, and it's not so much a choice. It's just kind of the workflow that I do. I build the miniatures, I glue them to the base, I prime them, I paint them, and then I'm like, all right, time to do the base after all that. So I just whack this watered down craft store paint straight over glued down dirt and rocks. And at first it looks a bit like, well, yeah, okay, it's pretty thin. But then I'll whack a homemade black wash over it, which is just a mix of black ink, a little bit of the brown ink, water, and some matte medium, and a tiny droplet of your dish soap to break the surface tension and make it like a wash. And again, that's just something that I'll consistently top up and make, because I only use it for basing stuff and for terrain. I don't use it on my models, but for bases, I'm not going to be using something like Nuln Oil for this many bases all the time. It's too expensive, and it's just a bit of a waste when you can make something so simple and so easy for dirt on a base. But yeah, once it's had a wash, then I just dry brush the whole thing with the Ushabti bone. However, the rocks do get picked out. So before the Ushabti bone dry brush, I'll just give the rocks like an overbrush with, you know, 2 different greys, depending on, you know, I'll basically go some of the rocks in Dawnstone, some of them in Skaven Blight Dinge, and then everything gets a dry brush with a sharp debone just to unify it. A couple of tufts. I use Deadland tufts from Army Painter, which are these, you know, these very grey ones that you can see here, as well as I think Highland tufts or mountain tufts. Not the ones that just look like, you know, dead grass that I use for, yeah, these ones. There's still a bit of green to them, but they're a browny green. And yeah, those 2 tufts will get chopped up because they're all usually a fair bit too big just to whack onto the base. So I'll cut them up with my hobby knife and, you know, stick them on in tiny tufts throughout the unit. And that's the unit done. Pretty stoked. You know, another 41 skeletons, and I don't think at this point I will be painting any more skeletons. For my vampire counts, I've got, you know, 41 with spears, I've got 40 odd with hand weapon and shield. I think that's skeletons done. I don't think I need more than that. But there they are, the core, the rattling death of the vampire counts complete. Love that. And then for something very new, I have done my spirit hosts. Now, originally, again, veterans of the channel will remember way back in the day when I first kind of unveiled the, you know, the first look at my vampire counts kind of project. You'll remember that I, in fact, had the Age of Sigmar spirit hosts. So rather than these, you know, chain rasps, I had the big swirling, like 3-pronged spirit hosts on these bases. And they were what I was planning to use. Excuse my croaky voice, by the way. It's the end of the day. I think I'm getting sick. So my voice has gotten a bit croaky, ladies and gentlemen. My apologies. But yes, people will remember that's what was planned as my spirit hosts. And I'm pretty sure somebody commented on that video being like, yeah, those models are great. I decided to use the chain rasp ghouls, or whatever these things are called from Age of Sigmar. I really like them, and they're a much better fit in terms of scale. And I was like, gosh dang it, that guy is completely right. So whoever commented, if you're watching this video, you made me scrap my plans and go out and buy some of these. Snap the old ones off this base and, you know, cast them into the fires of Mount Doom. Not really, they're just in a box somewhere now. But, you know, I absolutely agreed. It was 100% the right choice, and I'm so glad that I did it and followed that, you know, that inspiration / advice to use the chain rasps rather than those giant things, because not only are they fantastic looking models and it looks more like a swarm, but they are absolutely a much better scale. You know, the old ones were just kind of human sized, whereas although I think those models are lovely, the spirit hosts from Age of Sigmar, the big flying swirling things, scale wise they weren't anywhere close to what they should be. So I am very happy with these, and happy that that person, you know, made that comment, which forced me to change and pivot towards these. And these were unbelievably simple to paint. Honestly, the hardest part was actually just positioning them on the base to get, you know, 3 of them in the base, you know, in a reasonable pose, putting them all together, just to not make it look completely samey, all 3 bases. That was by far the hardest part of these bases. But how did I do them? I gave them a surprise, surprise, a Zenithal Prime. Nobody saw it coming. Going a little bit harder this time on the white, you know, really, you know, making sure that they were getting pretty bright, because, you know, obviously we're ending up ghostly, so starting bright is what we wanted. And then the entire model got covered in Nihilakh Oxide, or Nihilakh Oxide. I don't know if I'm supposed to be hitting the H in Nihilakh or just Nihilakh Oxide. Either way, how do you say these words? The whole thing just got awash with that. You know, I didn't water it down at all. I just pasted the whole thing in Nihilakh Oxide and let that dry. I also, from the bottom of the, the ghostly tendrils, I put a little bit of the contrast paint Athematic Blue, which I use on my my Graveguard blades to make them look, otherworldly and ghostly. So I put some of that into, the base of the tendrils coming up here, and then feathered it out, just, wiped, put my brush in some water, and then feathered out the transition. And then it was just dry brushes, using a classic dry brush. I dry brushed them Ulthuan Grey, which is just a super bright, almost white grey, all over them, going harder to the top and not quite so hard going down. And then just gave them a super light dry brush of white, just around the top. Because white is, a very chalky paint to use, and I wanted to keep them, nice and smooth. And I think they turned out looking pretty good. Super simple, Zenithal Prime, couple of washes and a dry brush, and Bob's your uncle, you've got spirit hosts, people. The models fit the bill beautifully, and yeah, I think they look great together. It's this little swarm base here, which is super cool. I've wanted some spirit hosts for the old vampire accounts for a while. They are very much one of the iconic units of the vampire accounts, and I've wanted to have them. I always planned to have them, but as soon as that person made their comment saying that, oh, I use these and I like them, I was like, not only, inspired, like, yes, I'm going to have to do that, but super disheartened. Like, because I'd already, I'd glued them to the base, I'd already primed them, and then was just like, no, I can't. I thought about it for ages, been like, no, maybe I'll just stick with it. But every time I thought about it, I was like, the dude was so right. That's so right. These are way better models for this. So it meant that I just didn't do it, and I haven't had them for ages because it put a hitch in my step, and that, this part of the project, of the Vampire Pounds project, got very tabled to the rear. So super stoked to finally have them and have this, this fantastic iconic unit of the spirit hosts for the vampire counts, which I love. And yeah, there they are. I think they look really cool. I think, they absolutely fit the bill. As much as I enjoy the charm of the classic old spirit host models, they're a little Gumby with the ridiculous, very generic poses and their swishing robes. I was never a huge fan of them, even back in the day when they were, the only ones. I still thought they were cool. I was like, spirits, yeah, cool. But even then, there was part of me that was like, yeah, the models aren't the best. So for my taste, these really are it. They look so cool, and they really, they fit the bill, fit the ghostly bill. And again, bases exactly the same as I did those ones. I stuck some bigger rocks, bigger tufts. Some of them had, because these are the bases that I had the original spirit hosts from, and they came with these, or at least one. Each base had one. What is this thing? It's a gravestone. God. At least one base had a gravestone attached to the spirit host, but a bunch of these chain rasp ghouls, are they just called chain rasps? I don't know. But they had, their own little gravestone as well. So it's meant that each base has at least one gravestone on it. Some of them have a couple. This big bad boy on the back here is one of the ones left over from the original spirit hosts. And it's got these fantastic melted candles and a skull on it. So I thought, make the candles red to tie in with the theme, because otherwise these guys are, they're just ghostly blue. There's no red and black on them anywhere. I did consider doing them in the, the classic AOS scheme where you actually paint, like the metal of the weapons and make the cloaks like black and brown or whatever, and really it's only like the base tendril bits and like the actual hands and whatnot, ghostly and semi-ethereal. But no, I didn't. In the end, I was like, no, I think I want full ghost. I think I want full ethereal. And again, I'm very happy with that. I think they've turned out looking really nice. It further separates them from the AOS chain rasp horde, army, and clearly shows them as no. These are fantasy spirit hosts. These are not chain rasps, even though obviously they are that model. But I think it separates their intent more strongly, having them as just ethereal ghosts. So there they are, stoked with them. Finally have some spirit hosts for the vampire counts. Love that. And of course, to go with them, I've got a little tomb banshee. Heck yeah, tomb banshee. Love them. Again, something I've actually never used before. It is in one battle report that will be coming up, not the newest one, but the one that'll be coming after it. And I've always wanted them. They were never something that I looked at and were like, hell yeah, that's the thing I love about vampire counts, screaming ghosts. They were never one of those things. Vampire counts, the thing I love about them is, vampires and tomb blade, graveguard, knights, black knights, that kind of stuff. But again, this is another fantastic piece just to add variation to the lists that can be built, And it's an interesting mechanic, the whole screaming thing. And it's a cool model. I dig it. It's a fun one. Yeah, I think when I bought these bad boys, I bought them in like an eBay lot, and this was in them as well. And originally, when I was painting these ones, I kind of didn't even expect or want to paint this. And then I finally cracked open the box and was like, oh, I got one of these as well. Oh yeah, why not? As a little afterthought, I'm like, I'll probably paint them exactly the same. And sure enough, I did exactly the same, doing the contrast paint at the base, Nailac oxide all over them, dry brushes, and boom, we got a banshee, ladies and gentlemen. We have the banshee from the tomb ready to scream people's souls out of their bodies. So yeah, another nice little piece to vary things. Another super simple paint job, but simple is good sometimes. When you're trying to paint a ghost, paint it like a ghost. It's not that complicated. Or at least I don't think so. I think they look good. I like the effect that it's come out with in the end. And if it's quick, all the better. There we go. That's my vampire counts. Let's have a look at this ancient metal hellblaster volley gun. Heck yeah, look at this bad boy. Ah, man. This is a model that I have owned since I was 16, because I have an Empire army just sitting in a box when Warhammer Fantasy changed from, 5th edition to 6th edition. I bought, I pre-ordered the 6th edition hardback rulebook, which I still have to this day, and I read it. And to be honest, back in the day, I thought the Empire were the worst. As a young boy, I thought the puffy sleeves of the Empire were the silliest thing I've ever seen. I was like, if you were going to play a human faction, why would you ever play the Empire rather than sweet Arthurian knights in mail and, surcoats? Who would want to play Mr. Puffy Sleeves? And that's the way I thought for the longest time. And then when the 6th edition book came out, not only did the art convince me that these guys were, actually super cool, but honestly, it was the fluff. It was the stories. All of the little, short stories were always painted from the Empire perspective, 99% of the time. And there'd be a little bit where it's, it's an Empire man recounting his memory of a battle against lizard men or whatever. But it was always from the perspective of the Imperial man. And, just setting it in such a relatable human outlook really got me, I don't know, I loved it. I really loved the perspective of the Empire. And then, I also was an adult. Well, I was a teenager, but I was a teenager that had started to broaden my horizons and look into, history and the fact that these actually were legitimate, outfits from the 14th century or something like that, 14th, 15th century. And so instead of just seeing silly puffy sleeves, I started to see, legitimate historical figures placed into this fantasy world with dragons and things. And I love that. It's one of the things about Warhammer that, for me, sets it apart from other fantasy genres, where we have believable, period humans using black powder weapons against things like giants and demons, That's something very unique to Warhammer, which I really started to resonate with. So when it came to 6th edition, I decided to buy an Empire army. And this was one of the models that I got back then. So I have a box full of Empire. You know, Empire was always going to be my next project after the Vampire Counts. And it just so happened that, you know, Grayson, the absolute champion, gifted me his wonderful 3D printed and, you know, incredibly themed, you know, Grudgebringer army, themed after Shadow of the Horned Rat and Dark Omen, the video games of the 1990s that I absolutely loved. That just meant that suddenly now I've just got like a perfect core to build out from. So yes, and this is my first addition to them, the Hellblaster volley gun, and I have painted them in the colors of Middenland, the blue and white, because it had always been my intention to make a Middenland army / a Middenheim army, because I love it. I love the northern humans with the Knights of the White Wolf and Ulrich and all of that good stuff that comes with Middenheim and Middenland. Oh man, my voice is shot. I'm so sorry. And the fact that, you know, the core of the army is this Grudgebringer mercenary company, you know, they can work with anyone, right? So as I slowly add more and more, you know, my Middenheim, like, or Middenland units to it, it'll just mean that, you know, they're up there and they've been reinforced by Middenland, or as I have more and more of my units, they'll be like, you know, the Middenland army being reinforced by elements of the Grudgebringer mercenaries, so it still works perfectly. And I considered for a long time just being like, no, I'll completely commit to the Grudgebringer theme and just paint, you know, the random units that came from random places. But every time I thought about it, my heart sang for Middenheim and for Middenland. And so I've decided in the end, no, I will just commit. I will paint my Middenland army, but they will just be working with the Grudgebringers because mercenaries, they'll work with anybody. So yes, here it is. Here's this beautiful, you know, 6th edition metal miniature. It weighs a ton. You could pick it up and bludgeon your opponent with it 100%. And these guys just are so good. I love them. So what have I used? Same old Zenithal Prime. I used Apothecary White on all of their white / you know, realistically, it's more of a grey, but I'm not going to paint things up to pure white. Partly because it doesn't actually show up very well on the camera, and partly because pure white sucks to paint. So I'm not doing it. I've used Leviathan Blue, which is a super dark blue contrast paint, for all of the blue, and then just given it some basic highlights with a couple of, you know, conventional paints, of which the names I cannot remember, so sorry. And that's kind of it. I used the fantastic kind of reddy brown new contrast paint that I got, which again, I can't remember the name of. I wish I'd gone down and had a look at it before I started filming this, but I didn't, so sorry. But it's the one, as I said, that's kind of named after Beastmen, more or less. And then I've used Gore Grunter fur on their hats, on their little leather caps. Ayenden yellow for this little yellow feather. More Flesh Tearers red on the top. And I think they're looking pretty great. Gilliman Flesh for the flesh. This guy I just love. I call this guy, you know, Wilhelm the Drunk. Old drunken Wilhelm. He's got a little pot of like ale that he's kept a little cloth over the top of to make sure flies don't get in it. He's got his little ale jack. I made sure to paint his nose like a little bit red to show that he is obviously a bit drunk. I love him. He's the best. You're my favorite, Wilhelm. But you'll also always be the first to die because you're drunk. And then the man with the puffy shirt, who does not get a name because he's silly. He's young, and he's full of vigor, full of vim, and just, with the classic quartered scheme. But yeah, I love this miniature. It's beautiful. I have filmed a battle report with it. Again, it's the one that's coming, not the next one, but the one after. But so good. Such a fantastic piece for the Empire, both thematically and just in look. Look at this Gatling cannon. Ah, so good. The cannon itself has just been painted with traditional metallics. I actually used the Vallejo Air aluminum, which I just mixed with some black ink to dull it down a bit so it's not quite so bright, because it is very bright if you just use it straight out of the pot. It's like the brightest edge highlight you would ever want to use. So typically I'll mix it with some black ink first. I used, what did I use? I used snakebite leather for all of the wood. And yeah, what is it? Balthazar gold for all of the bronze. Gave it all a wash with some black, and then highlighted it back up. So pretty simple, pretty easy. Did a nice little blue skull for the Middenland in there, which was again the same old paint, Leviathan blue, and then some conventional highlights. And there it is. There is the Hellblaster volley gun. Like I said, I've been sitting on this miniature for more than 10 years. A long time now. I was 16. Wait, excuse me. More than 20 years. Oh, I'm an old man these days, ladies and gentlemen. An old man. And my voice, tells the tale of that. But yes, it's one of those miniatures that's sat in a box, unpainted, or has seen the field unpainted more times than I would care to admit. And finally, it stands before me, painted in all of its glory, and I love it. So yeah, there it is. That is what I have been doing with my vampire counts and my empire. And here is the 3D printed / old terrain that I have been doing a bit of work on. So we'll start with this old piece that has seen the table many times at this stage. And yeah, I just decided I wanted to give it a little bit of a workup, because although it is a lovely piece of terrain as is, I just thought it could use a little bit of depth and a little bit of highlight, and so that's what I've done. So this, I believe, is a Battlefield in a Box hill that I actually just got off eBay at one point. I saw it on there for reasonably cheap back in the day when I was still looking for hills. And yeah, I bought it, and I haven't done anything with it, before this point, because it was just already, just a nice grey rocky hill. Now it's designed as well, when you actually buy it from Battlefield in a Box, it comes with grass, like a static grass that you can put on top of it to make it look like a grassy rocky outcrop. But I've got enough grassy hills, so I just liked just having it as nice bare rock. But it was pretty one-dimensional in terms of tone, so I decided just to give it a bit of a workup. And originally, all I was planning to do was just kind of spray a little bit of brown around the edges, just so it's set into the table a little bit, because it was always a bit of a stark jump from, whatever kind of mat it was sitting on to this sudden, just like grey, from nothing to grey. And I always kind of thought, realistically, if that was, sitting in the ground, the base would be a little more brown. So yeah, I just got out the airbrush and I put some of that that burnt umber ink into it, with a little bit of water and a little bit of matte varnish, because ink is, traditionally a little bit on the glossy side. So I just mixed in some matte varnish to make it nice and matte. And then basically just went around firstly, spraying all of the edges to give it that, kind of dirty feel as to where it's actually going to be connecting to the table. And then all in like the crevices and whatnot, just giving it a nice feeling of earthy brown in all of these spots where, dirt would collect over time. As it rained, and then, dirt gets swept up into it and dust and whatnot. So, all of these little spots, I just got my airbrush and just shot some brown into it. Try not to go too hard, because less is more when it comes to stuff like this, but already I thought that gave it, a lot of nice tonal variation. And then I decided just to, give it a big dry brush. Pretty much at the same time that I was starting to dry brush these things, I just had this there and was like, yeah, I'll just give it a few dry brushes as well. I do feel that I maybe went a little bit hard on the dry brushing, and particularly on the lightest grays. It's starting to look, I don't know, maybe a little too much. I don't know, let me know, what do you think? Do you feel like I went a little hard on the dry brush? Because I've considered going back in with some like watered down dark grey And just, kind of hitting some of the flat surfaces. Like the edges are fine. I have no problem with the edges popping that way, but I feel like I maybe just went a bit hard on the flats. There's a little bit too much of the brightest highlight kind of all over it. If it was kind of more so just relegated to the edges, sweet, no problem. But I don't know, you tell me, what do you think? Did I go a little hard on the brightest highlights, or does this look good? Does it look like a wind-swept, dirty old rocky outcrop? All in all, I am very happy with it, and it looks 100% better than what it did originally with the, straight out of the box, pre-painted battlefield in a box kind of thing. The addition of the brown and a few highlights has really made it, stand out as like a decent piece. And it's super cool that battlefield in a box stuff is like that. You can pull it out, use it straight away because it comes pre-painted. And then all it takes is just like a little bit of work on it, and it can suddenly be really nice looking terrain. So, it's actually really hard to come by battlefield in a box stuff, or at least for me at the moment. The usual websites that I used to buy it from just are out of stock of most stuff. There's a few pieces that doesn't look like they've been discontinued and may never come back. So if you get a chance to buy some battlefield in a box stuff, guys, if you can see it around where you are, I'd highly recommend it, if only because it's nice to be able to just buy terrain that you can pull out and use immediately. But as I said, doesn't take much to turn it into terrain that, I'm pretty happy to say this is terrain that I've painted. Even though, I didn't do that much to it. I gave it some brown depth and some dry brushes and boom. And now it looks, much, to my eye, much better than how it started. So there it is, that old piece of terrain, just given a bit of a facelift, brought, up to standard with some of the other terrain that I have, painted myself. And then we have some of these bad boys. Now these guys have already featured in a battle report. These two were just used during the army showcase section, and these I just absolutely love. These Dwarven statues of none shall pass, none come into the Dwarven realms unannounced. They're very reminiscent of those Lord of the Rings statues that they sailed down the river in between, which is so cool. And they are massive. They're absolutely huge. Let's get a little bit of scale here. Woohoo! Those are big Dwarven statues, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, these ones just featured. They're in the Dwarves versus Chaos Dwarf battle report, and I just set them up as the backdrop of the army showcase. And these ones were actually on the table, showing a bit of the ruined Dwarven area that they were fighting over at the time on the edges of Dwarven lands. So these, although I love them, I think they still need a little bit of work to be brought to a similar level as these. These have not yet, well look, let's just talk about what they have had done so far. So these I just gave a spray paint with a Rust-Oleum paint, a nice deep brown, which I think is an espresso. Gave the whole thing a solid coat in the brown, and then from above gave them a nice, pretty solid dusting / a zenithal prime from above with a light gray. So all of the brown is still, stayed in the recesses. You can see down in here, we've got some nice, deep browns in there. But largely speaking, they're pretty dang gray. But, it is stone. I wanted them to be pretty gray. And then I just gave them a bunch of dry brushes. At first, I actually didn't want to give them dry brushes because this is my first, one of my first times, painting 3D printed terrain, and these ones definitely have a fair bit more of that 3D print texture. You can get close on them. I don't know how much is being picked up on the camera right now, but there's a fair bit of those 3D print lines throughout them. And the more I looked at with videos, people are like, you don't want to use washes on 3D printed terrain, and you don't want to dry brush because it's just going to pick out that texture. So I really just was planning to do just a straight zenithal prime, the brown and the gray, and hope that was enough. And they looked okay with just the brown and the gray zenithal prime from the rattle can, but I was a bit like, oh man, it's not that great. There's not that much tonal variation. I tried to give them like a really careful dusting from above with an ivory spray paint, but honestly that just ended up looking speckled and gross. So I ended up just spraying them brown and then spraying them grey all over again. These got double sprayed because the attempt at like a highlight with the ivory did not work. But in the end I was like, you know what, let's just give it a shot. At worst I'll just have to prime them a third time, and just started going at them, you know, pretty delicately with a dry brush, and then pretty quickly realized that no, dry brushing works just fine. In fact, it works great, you know, particularly on terrain pieces, and particularly for my purpose, you know, from a camera and from the you know, the distance back from a table and playing Warhammer, you're not going to see much of the texture. And in this case particularly, they're statues, it's rock, it's fine for them to have texture. Maybe if I had a 3D printed thing that was supposed to be perfectly smooth, yes, that's going to start to be a problem. And maybe that's when you shy away from 3D printed things that are meant to be perfectly smooth. But, you know, for this, they looked great. And so I just went in with a number of dry brushes, working my way up through a few different greys, and finishing off with a, you know, a shabty bone / ivory to give them a bit of a dusty feel. And I think they've turned out looking pretty good. However, I do think they are a bit too just flat grey. Although there is some brown in there, as you can see from that leftover espresso. Largely speaking, it's all just very tones of grey, and that is kind of it. And so what I need to do to them is what I did to these. So these bad boys actually got painted the exact same way at the exact same time. You know, I had them all out on the newspaper, priming them with the brown and then with the grey. So you can see the, you know, the brown is definitely still deep under there. And then gave them the dry brushes the same. And in fact, in the battle report, they are used just like these. It was only after I filmed the battle report that I got the airbrush out again, got the burnt umber in the mix, and just sprayed a little bit of it into some of those recesses. And, you know, around, again, seeing them on the table, all of these points are supposed to be like, you know, this is stuff that's embedded in the ground and has like slowly started to be like crumbled and buried somewhat. And for them to just be perfectly grey, it just didn't look right. So firstly, just spraying, you know, down around the edges to make it clear that they are, you know, they're connected to the earth. And then also just, you know, up into some recesses just to show that it's not all just perfect grey. You know, it's to give them a bit of weather. You know, there's dust and dirt that's collecting in all of these little bits. And I think it looks much better. I don't know. You tell me. What do you think? You know, does this look more natural and more like a ruined statue, or a statue that's been out in the weather? What is this? To me, for my money, it's this one all the way. There was a point where I was like, maybe I've gone too heavy on the old spray, and maybe I could go back in for another dry brush or two just to tone it back a bit. But I don't know. I could keep going back and forth with this stuff until the cows come home, and I am just pretty happy with this. I think it looks great. And also, how good are these pieces? These are just beautiful. I love them. And they are, you know, perfectly themed for the declining Dwarven Empire. There's going to be large parts of, you know, the Dwarven Karazankor that have been, you know, lost and destroyed and are in disrepair, you know, as they've had to pull back out of lost holds. And these are great. They perfectly encapsulate that feel. And they're just, yeah, really beautiful 3D prints. And again, you know, I was looking for stuff. I was looking for dwarf-themed terrain and was like, where can I get it? What am I going to do? And looked on Etsy and just had a look. And there is, you know, a plethora of, you know, different kinds of terrain. And I wanted dwarf statues. I wanted dwarf ruined statues. I found these, and boom. And although I love these, and these will definitely come in handy for specific types of games that I'm looking for, these I like more. You know, they're just such a beautiful, beautiful piece of terrain. And I think they've come up looking really nice. You know, spray paint, a couple of dry brushes, and then in the end using the airbrush just to weather them back a little bit with some brown. And I think, yeah, I think they look great, and they'll really add some stuff to my kind of dwarf themed tables. The more I play, the more I'm like, I need to put more work into my tables to really get some cool theme into them. So it's not always just, out in the wilderness. I mean, don't get me wrong, these will still be out in the wilderness, but they clearly mark it as Dwarven Realm, or once was Dwarven Realm. And that's the kind of stuff I want. I want more terrain to make the tables look like they are set in a specific place for a specific theme or narrative that I'm going for at the time. Because for me, that's what really elevates a game in a battlefield, is really setting it in a place and a time and a theme. And these will really do that, in my opinion. So yeah. I'll maybe try and throw a link in the description to these things as to where I got them on Etsy. Nobody's paying me for this. I bought these, and I'm not getting any sort of kickback here, so I'll only promote people's stuff so much. But like I said, get on Etsy, get on any 3D printing forum, and look for dwarf terrain, dwarf ruined statues, dwarf statues, and you'll find this just as quickly as I did. So do a little hunting, ladies and gentlemen, and you'll find it. So there it is. There it is. I am, pretty stoked with the facelift of the hill, the new 3D printed terrain, and this is what I've been getting done with the vampire counts and empire. And there it is. There it is. Another Let's Hobby done. Another hobby check-in. 41 skeleton warriors with spears, 3 bases of spirit hosts, a tomb banshee, and a hellblaster volley gun. 4 pieces of 3D printed terrain, and a nice little facelift for an old favorite. So there it is, guys. That's a pretty good little output for me recently. I knew I had some games coming up where I was planning to use the vampire counts, and I was like, now's the time. A lot of the time it is a deadline that forces me to get things done, as it seems to for a lot of people. You look on some forums of people talking about, like, how do I find motivation to paint stuff? A lot of the time it is, setting up a thing in the future that you want to use. Like, I've got a game coming up in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever, or it's, preparing for a tournament or an event where you want things painted. You write a list with stuff in it that you're like, that needs to be painted, and that is what helps get you across the line. I know it's absolutely helped me. That's what got these bloody skeletons painted. Everything you saw here was in preparation to use them in a battle report coming up. So huzzah! Huzzah! I did it! I painted some stuff, and I have filmed some battle reports with them. So incoming, my channel members have already seen one of them. They've had them up for almost a week for, like, preview for my channel members. It's something like that, or channel members first, something like that. It's something I'm kind of trying out. And then on Friday, that one will be launching for free on YouTube for everybody else. And then, this one that still needs to be edited, which is a cracker of a game, ladies and gentlemen. And that one that still needs to be edited is a game of 6th edition. Oh, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. I have filmed a battle report back in the classic days of 6th edition. My channel has absolutely been built on the back of 6th edition. It's been the driving force of this channel, and the growth of this channel has all been around my 6th edition battle reports. And many of my classic viewers have been, clamoring and calling for a 6th edition battle report because they miss it, and fair enough. The new stuff is not for everybody, and I get that. And I still love 6th edition, and playing and filming this game only reinforced that. So super cool. Expect a 6th edition game coming up soon. It is not the next one to be released, but it's coming, ladies and gentlemen. It's already filmed. Just needs to be edited. So, get excited for that. It's coming. But yeah, I'm not sure what I want to work on next. I did actually prime an Empire mortar as well at the same time when I primed the hellblaster volley gun, and kind of like half painted it. I basically just used the crew of it as like painting swatches for like, what kind of blue and gray or white am I going to use here? You know, I was like, is Leviathan blue even going to work? Is that too dark? Because I knew it was a really dark blue. But I also didn't want them to have a light blue, you know, like white / you know, very light gray and light blue. Yeah, it didn't really do it for me as a scheme. And I had seen at one point someone showing off their Middenheim army with this like dark blue. And I was like, ooh, that is striking. You know, the contrast is really high with the light and the dark blue, but it's still blue. But I wasn't sure if Leviathan was the one. And after trying Leviathan blue, as well as Ultramarines blue, which was really the only one that I was like, you know, that one's still dark enough, but maybe we'll have more like light and shade, more depth. I tried them both, and it's Leviathan. Leviathan has that deep depth that I really wanted, that contrast between the light and the dark, while still being recognizably blue. I do have to highlight it though, or at least, you know, for it to look to the point that I wanted it to look. Leviathan blue does not have a whole lot of like that whole contrast paint thing going on, where it doesn't draw much away from the highs. It doesn't leave much of a highlight. It's all dark and mid-tone, and that's it. So for it to really look good, it needs highlights, which is a bit of a shame. It might just mean that, you know, for large amounts of rank and file state troops, they just won't get the highlights. They'll just be dark and mid-tone, and, you know, so be it. Or maybe one day I'll pull my finger out and highlight all of them. Maybe. Or I'll see if dry brushing can, you know, kind of get that effect done without it looking too chalky. But there's a whole bunch of good videos on how to make dry brushing look good these days, and I do kind of use them a bit these days. You know, adding just like getting my finger wet with some paint water and rubbing that across the dry brush first, just to moisten the bristles a little bit, which is completely, you know, not what you would think would work from a dry brush, but there's all the information out there talking about how we've been dry brushing wrong this whole time. Depending on the effect that you want. If you want something to look dusty and chalky, then old school dry brushing, here it comes. But there's a new school way, and I've been experimenting with it, and I used it on those chain rasps / spirit hosts, and it came out as a smooth finish, let me tell you. So it's, yeah, it's adding just a little bit of moisture to the bristles, and it's not, you know, drying them on something that's actually going to absorb all the moisture. So I'm using, like, I've got like a plastic plate. It's like a baked beans plate that I've, you know, been using over the years as like, you know, basically just like a palette to put these, you know, these gross thick freaking craft store paints on when I want to use them for stuff. And it's slowly built up like a bit of gnarly texture on there. And I've essentially over the years made a texture palette, as they go by these days. And so instead of using, you know, paper towel or even cardboard, I mean, cardboard's probably not as bad, but paper towel, which is what I always used back in the day to get the, you know, the majority of my paint off my dry brush. Now I'll use this plastic plate that's got, you know, built up paint on it that is essentially a texture palette to get the majority of it off, but it's not drying it out per se. It's not pulling the moisture out of the paint. And then with that, just a little bit of moisture in the bristles, yeah, it seems to be able to get this fantastic fantastic smooth finish from a dry brush. Anyway, I digress. You know, there's plenty, as I said, plenty of videos out there telling you how to dry brush in this new school method, but there's something to it. Something to it. So maybe I'll be able to use that to, you know, get quick fire results on my Leviathan blue for my Middenheim army. I'm super keen to keep expanding that out. You know, keep adding, you know, more Middenheimers to have this mixed force of Grudgebringer mercenary and Middenheim Empire working together to hold back, you know, the tides of orcs and undead and whoever else, beastmen and things that have come over. So I'm super keen for that. And as I said, I've got a whole army just waiting to be like, you know, kind of stripped and put back together because they're in a state of disrepair, that's for damn sure. But the mortar's going to be an easy one because, as I said, it's already primed and ready to go. Mortar's going to be a quick one to add just to, again, kind of be able to vary the kind of like artillery stuff that I can take in that army. Great swords is what I want. I want to add, you know, a unit of good infantry to that army, you know, something that can both do some damage and also just hold the ground, hold the line. So some great swords are definitely something that I want to add. They'd probably be, in terms of the Empire army, the next thing that I really want to add to them. Maybe you just get the mortar done so that it's there because it's quick and it's easy and it's already ready to go. I've got a bunch of great swords that are already built that I've either purchased off eBay purchases. I've also got at least 10 of them on sprue that need to be built. So I'll definitely have at least 20, maybe even 30 great swords in terms of models that I have that need to get prepared, primed, and painted. But I think they would be the next unit added to the Empire, which I'm super keen for. I love great swords. They're so cool. Really, really what I would love is, you know, some of those, you know, Chutigen Guard, which are the, you know, the Middenheim equivalent of great swords with great hammers and the wolf cloaks. Ah, oh, so cool. Don't get me wrong. I would love to go, you know, full Ulrich. Ulrich is super cool, but I also still enjoy Sigmar. I like warrior priests, so, and you know, not all of Middenland is just like, Ulrich, it's nothing but Ulrich. So I'll have a healthy mix of, you know, Ulrican themed stuff, as well as classic Sigmar, warrior priests, and, you know, just regular boys. And I've got great swords. I'm not going to try and convert all of them to be holding hammers. I want great swords. But if and when the Empire get their refresh, you know, if those, like, you know, Ulrican Great Hammer, you know, Chutigen Guard come out, you better believe I'm going to be buying some, because hell yeah. Because hell yeah. I've got Knights of the White Wolf as well. I've got a mix of both the old metals and kind of the new plastic kit that you could use to make it. Although the plastic ones that I have, you know, there was something about, I really didn't like the arms that you got to make them into Knights of the White Wolf. Mainly because they had this like cloth shoulder bit. And I didn't like that because, again, you know, in the 6th edition rulebook, there's this beautiful image of the Knights of the White Wolf riding down like a bunch of, it might be undead. I think it's undead. They're like smashing skulls. It's either undead or orcs. I can't remember. But that image was what made me be like, Knights of the White Wolf, because they just looked freaking sick. Huge hair and beards flowing in the wind. These mad wolf cloaks. But under the wolf cloaks, you could clearly see these huge plate shoulders and plate. Everything was just like chunks of beautiful full plate. And then you get the plastic kit, and they've got these like cloth shoulders with the, you know, the plate underneath. And I hated it. I was like, no, that's not what I want them to be. So instead, what I did, as the, you know, 16-year-old kid putting it together, was I got the lance hand that, you know, just holds the lance up in the air, chopped all the lances off, chopped the hammers off, you know, those cloth-armed things, and just stuck the hammers to the, you know, the fully plated shoulders that hold the lances up and down. And I thought they looked great, but it is also then just an entire unit of just guys like this, you know, exactly the same, all of them in that same pose, except for the champion, which is, you know, got it out and about. But now, using some of those guys in this pose and some of the old metals, which are also fully plated up, I think that unit will start looking pretty cool. So there's something that I also want to add, you know, maybe not in the short term, but they're one of the ones that I love. Again, I digress. I'm really just chirping here. But yeah, I want to put some work into the Empire. Stoked that I finally have added that hellblaster volley gun. My voice is absolutely shot, as you can hear, ladies and gentlemen, so I'm going to wrap it up here. If you enjoyed this video, guys, don't forget, go through the YouTube things, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you want to support us, consider becoming a channel member. Leave a comment on the video. Tell me what you think about this new stuff that I've, you know, painted up and added to the armies. Let me know what you think about the 3D printed terrain. Tell me what you think about that hill. You know, should I knock it back a bit, or does it look good the way it is? You tell me. You know, throw some comments. What do you want to see added next to the armies that I've got? Is there a unit? Is there a thing that you're like, oh, I want this? If there's something you want to see, guys, chuck it in here, because, you know, comments like that are what start to fuel me and give me inspiration as to do stuff. Clearly, by those bloody spirit hosts, you know, clearly it's comments that kind of fuel my decision making. So if you want to fuel me with, you know, your ideas, whack a comment on it, guys. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram, links in the description. But until next time, I'm Stos, happy wargaming, and be good to your mother.